What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with a breakdown of 10 huge changes coming to Destiny 2 with the launch of Season 17. And over the past couple of years, Bungie's seasonal updates have grown in significance, and the upcoming season starting on May 24th is no exception. And so we're going to touch on new activities, details about the new dungeon, as well as subclass changes, crafting updates, playlist reworks, new rewards, quality of life, and Sandbox to discuss some of the biggest changes and what we can expect to see at launch. And so as always, I hope you find the video useful. But before we get into it guys, are you looking for delicious, fresh and easy to prepare meals delivered right to your door? If you are, HelloFresh have some mouth-watering recipes and ingredients which make cooking at home easy and satisfying. HelloFresh deliver ingredients and recipes directly to us, with 50 weekly options to help us explore global flavors in our kitchens. They have options for everyone, including healthy and wholesome foods to quick and easy meals which suit all tastes. Plus, their produce is sourced directly from US farmers and arrives fresh in less than a week. If you're like me and need a little bit of guidance, HelloFresh have plenty of step-by-step recipes with pre-portioned ingredients to cut down on prep time and make the process simple. But on top of that, you can learn some new cooking skills, and you can adjust your plan and order size at any time if you plan to cook for your friends and family. One of my favorite things about HelloFresh is that they've got tons of veggie and pescatarian options, as well as healthy recipes that won't sacrifice on any flavor. One of my favorite recipes at the moment is the one-pot chickpea, kale and tomato soup. And if you're like me and you're watching what you're eating, HelloFresh is awesome and helps us maintain our goals and still eat happy while also keeping the planet healthy, as HelloFresh are the first carbon neutral meal kit company, and they're constantly working to reduce emissions, packaging and food waste. So I totally recommend that you guys check them out, so be sure to use my link or go to hellofresh.com and use code POGHOUNDMAY16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts across 6 HelloFresh boxes. Plus you'll get free shipping as well, so be sure to check those details out in the description below, and thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring the video. Now though, let's talk about Season 17, and the first big thing changing is the season itself, which of course sounds silly on its own, but it comes with a significant number of changes. And while Bungie haven't revealed all of the new content in depth just yet, we'll initially see a new key seasonal activity, and that's always the expectation. But that content will house the new main weapon drops and rewards for the seasonal loot system. We're also quite likely to see an update to the helm like last year, where the side wings were opened up for Season of the Splicer and Season of the Lust. And if that normal pattern is followed, the seasonal vendor and upgradable loot system akin to the war table will be housed there as well. Then we'll get 100 new ranks on the season pass with unique rewards plus exotics. And it's pretty much expected to see 1 exotic quest per season. And so those are some of the things we can count on happening in terms of new content. But again, in terms of the theme, we are being made to wait right up until the starting line, with all of the content being revealed on Tuesday. Otherwise, there are some general quality of life improvements which will be pretty useful. And we're getting a vault space increase of 100, so it'll go from 500 to 600 total items. And Bungie say they're still investigating future solutions to storage problems, but they're hoping that this will help in the meantime. The other thing to bear in mind regarding the content shift is that power level is basically being increased by 10 points. So the soft cap will be 1510, the powerful cap 1560, and the hard cap 1570. Moving on, and still connected to activity content for the season, a brand new dungeon will be a key piece of content for Season 17. The name and theme of the dungeon is still a mystery at the moment. And of course, interestingly, sometimes dungeons have a sort of adjacent theme or story arc alongside the main season story. Bungie did also confirm that the dungeon will launch on May 27th, which is a Friday, at 10 AM Pacific. So that'll be at the daily reset time. And the recommended power to enter for normal difficulty will be 1550. Plus, they give a tease that we'll be able to earn 1 legendary armor set, with an artifice version of that set acquired via the master difficulty, which will launch on the same day. And then the new dungeon will also feature 4 new legendary weapons, as well as 2 reprised legendary weapons. Plus an exotic weapon with an exotic catalyst, and an exotic accessory which is a ship or a sparrow, and 2 legendary emblems. And so there are certainly quite a few rewards to acquire inside of that dungeon, and it is at least useful that we have the heads up as to when it will launch. We should also note though, for some of the older dungeon and raid content, we're going to see a rotating playlist introduced. So Bungie say the newly released raid and dungeon each season will grant pinnacle rewards for all encounters. So in Season 17, Vow of the Disciple and the Season 17 dungeon will drop pinnacles. But outside of that, there will be a raid rotation and a dungeon rotation, each offering a pinnacle reward once completed. And so for the weekly rotation, they say we'll have the chance to feature all raids and dungeons not listed as the seasonal rotation. And so we've got Last Wish, Garden of Salvation, Deepstone Crypt, and VOG outside of Valve Disciple. And equally, all of the old dungeons will feature into the dungeon rotation. And they add that completing the final encounter of any of the chosen raids or dungeons will award a pinnacle drop from a weekly challenge. And for any raid or dungeon that offers a higher difficulty, such as Master Vault of Glass, that higher difficulty will also be available to select should players be itching for the challenge. And inside of that rotator system, they say all lockouts on encounter rewards and legendary gear are being removed, and that means that any legendary drop in both the raids and dungeons will be 100% farmable. And that includes full runs and encounters, so it's going to be a great opportunity to see all of those items featured again, and let us know if you'll be diving into the raid and dungeon content. The next big set of changes and additions will be for crafting. And obviously with a new seasonal activity, but also a dungeon, there are going to be a bunch of new weapons, and we should at least see a selection of those added to the crafting table in the Enclave. So there are going to be some new things to go after, but also Bungie are changing up crafting materials. And so they're removing all elements with the exception of neutral element, and that means ruinous, adroit, mutable, drowned, and energetic elements will no longer be in the game, and we'll only have to worry about one currency. But also, we're going to get the ability to achieve the masterwork to look for crafted weapons in Season 17. And so to get a gold border on the legendary crafted weapon, we'll need to unlock an enhanced intrinsic perk at the crafting table, as well as 2 enhanced trait perks. And once we have those on a legendary weapon, we'll get the gold border, but crafted exotics will still require a catalyst to be inserted. Of course, it's possible that we'll see other tuning for crafting going into the new season, but new craftable weapons, as well as some quality of life improvements to the system, will definitely be welcomed. Next though, we can expect more big changes for the season in the form of updates to the various playlists. And so before we talk vendors and reputation, Bungie have confirmed that we will get new playlist weapons for Crucible, Gambit, and the Vanguard. Crucible will see a new fusion rifle, Gambit a new shotgun, and the Vanguard a bow. And then for Nightfalls, the Horror's Least pulse rifle from back in Forsaken and the DFA hand cannon from Vanilla Destiny 2 are going to be updated with random rolls. And they'll also get adept versions for the Grandmasters. Plus Trials of Osiris will get a couple of new weapons, including the Forgiveness sidearm and the Burden of Guilt fusion rifle. And Bungie have provided an image that shows new armor, so got some very interesting Trials themes on the armor right there. And then there'll also be a new Sparrow for Trials as well. So plenty of new rewards to chase. And that's on top of new Foundry weapons that are likely to be added and general Whirlpool legendaries. Plus we'll have the ability to acquire the Ritual weapon, which is Chain of Command, and we'll be able to do that in our preferred playlist by visiting Shaxx, Zavala, or the Drifter. And if you decide to go with the Drifter, there are going to be some changes to Gambit reputation, and they're increasing the base reputation that we'll get for a match completion to 75, up from 50. And they're also increasing the value of each streak to 20, up from 15. And so especially if you are playing with those streak bonuses, we'll be ranking up with the Drifter quite a bit quicker. And there are also general adjustments to activity streaks, so Bungie have said it will now take the sum of streak values across 4 reputations. And that includes Gambit, Crucible, Strikes, and Dares of Eternity, and it will take them to a maximum of 5 total. So if you complete a match that would bring the sum of these over 5, it retracts a point from the streak of every ritual besides the one you just played. As an example, if you play 5 Crucible matches, you'll have an activity streak value of Crucible 5, but after that, if you play a Gambit match, you now have Gambit 1 and Crucible 4. Then if you play 2 more Gambit matches, you now have Gambit 3 and Crucible 2. So as you move through different modes, the streak benefit from different playlists essentially drops off. Another useful thing to bear in mind, but starting in Season 17, if you get error coded out of a non-match made Nightfall, and that includes Grandmasters, players will now be able to rejoin after login. And so as well as new drops and rewards, there are some useful quality of life updates to the playlists right there. The next very significant change that Bungie unusually haven't told us much about is that we are getting another Subclass 3.0 rework. With that being Sandbox, Bungie would normally talk about that kind of thing before the launch of a season, but as far as actual confirmations go, we're not sure, and so it'll be a pretty fun surprise on Tuesday, especially given the significance of the overhaul that the subclasses are seeing. And we can expect the new artifact to have a lot of mods associated with that subclass element as well. So let us know which subclass you're rooting for on Tuesday. Up next though, let's speak a bit about some of the other changes that we're going to see in Season 17, because we're going to see some of the more significant updates to the Crucible that we've had in the last couple of years really. So Initially, we have the changes for Iron Banner. Bungie have outlined that we're only going to see this event twice per season, and so that'll be week 2 of Season 17 starting on May 31st, as well as week 8, which starts on July 12th. Another significant change is that power level is now going to be disabled in the Iron Banner. It will remain active in Trials, but for the Iron Banner event, power will no longer be significant. Obviously, that will open up some of the possibilities around the gear that we can use. And then Lord Saladin will adopt a ranking system similar to Saint 14 or Lord Shaxx have, and so current Iron Banner tokens and bounties are going to be completely reworked. The tokens will be removed and replaced by the reputation system. And inside of that reputation system, there'll be cosmetic rewards and various different thresholds that have particular drops. But also Lord Saladin will have focusing for iron engrams, and so we'll be able to target armor and weapons on the vendor. And then by equipping pieces of Iron Banner gear, both weapons and armor, we'll be able to get a reputation buff inside of the playlist. And that's going to increase how quickly we can rank up very significantly. But there will also be daily challenges and a new Iron Lord title. So let us know if you'll be jumping into the Iron Banner in Season 17 and trying to unlock that, as well as any thoughts you may have on the changes. Additionally though, for PvP, Rift will be introduced as the Iron Banner game mode for Season 17, and so it's only going to come up in those 2 weeks that the Iron Banner is present, and then the Rift mode itself will be added into general playlists in Season 18. And the short explanation of the mode is that a spark appears in the center of the map after a few seconds of the match starting. Each team will have to fight to pick up the spark, and then successfully carry it to the enemy team's base. And if you're able to dunk that spark, obviously that will score points. And we'll also be able to do this on a new PvP map, and this map is called Disjunction, which takes place on Savathun's Throne World. Bungie also say it's one of the larger PvP maps they've introduced. Unfortunately, this map will be present for all PvP playlists. And now let's move to wider PvP changes, and Bungie say that Season 17 will bring back zone control, the familiar 6v6 mode, very much like Control, but of course, Guardians don't get points for kills, and instead players get points for every 15 seconds that a zone is under their control. So it'd be cool to have that back for a bit of variation. And that will be available in Crucible Labs. But for Control, there are a couple of changes, so moving forward, teams will gain 1 point per participant when capturing a zone, rather than 1 flat point. And that's the same as it was in D1, which will definitely mix up scoring a little bit. For Elimination, the time limit is lowered to 90 seconds to match Trials of Osiris. Then in Mayhem, points for super kills have been increased to 3, where they were previously 2. They've also increased the score target to 200, where it was previously 150, and they've decreased the time limit to 7 minutes, which was previously 8. For the Rumble game mode, they've increased the time limit for matches to 10 minutes from 8 minutes. Then in Showdown, they've increased the round score targets to 15, where it was previously 10. So there's a little bit of quality of life adjustment right there for PvP modes. Of course, the introduction of the new map and the rework for Iron Banner, and that's separate to how the Subclass 3.0 and Weapon Sandbox changes will adjust PvP as well. So while there is always more that Bungie can do, it's definitely nice to see at least some new content and a handful of changes. For some of the events that run alongside seasons, in 17 we are going to see the start of a shift in the kinds of progression that we'll get from seasonal events. So Bungie have confirmed that Solstice of Heroes will return in July, but the event will simply be known as Solstice now, and the key activity is called Bonfire Bash, a reworked version of the European Aerial Zone. And Solstice, as well as future seasonal events, moving forward will feature an event card, and the card will house all of the challenges, unique event rewards, and event seals and titles. And so all of the objectives for events will be trackable in one place. The event challenges will work very much like seasonal challenges, and by unlocking those challenges, we'll get access to a new event title, and that will be revealed when Solstice drops in July. But Bungie will also introduce a new multi-event seal that has multiple objectives split across all 4 of the seasonal events that we see throughout the year. And so for the multi-event seal, the first time anyone will be able to actually complete it will be when Guardian Games returns in 2023. But all of the rewards associated with the event, which will also be housed in that card, will either be unlocked instantly when we get access to the card, or will be items purchased via tickets that are going to be a new event currency that we earn via the challenges. And so considering that some of these events have worked in very much the same way for a while, it's definitely worth bearing in mind for Season 17. A couple of significant sandbox adjustments to talk about right here regarding weapons. And for Season 17, the stability stat on weapons will grant flinch resistance, which essentially adjusts how much your screen shakes when you're being shot by other enemies. And basically that stability stat will also introduce that flinch resistance, and the higher the stat, the more resistance we'll be able to have. They'll also be introducing an airborne effectiveness stat for weapons, and essentially for precision weapons, in the API we'll be able to view the airborne effectiveness. and the higher that stat is on a given weapon, the more accurate it will be at landing precision shots in the air. So those are good quality of life adjustments. And then if you're wondering about a few interesting exotic buffs and weapon archetype things to think about, initially, glaives are going to see a buff, so Bungie point out that the glaive shield grants 97.5% damage resistance in PvE and 75% in PvP. And in Season 17, glaives will see increased melee damage versus PvE enemies by 25%, that is with the exception of bosses and vehicles. They're also reducing the energy drain speed while shielded by 30%, and they're increasing the projectile speed dependent on the range stat. And projectiles will generally move quicker from these weapons moving forward. On top of this though, exotic glaives are going to be buffed, and when players use the Titan Edge of Action glaive, they'll gain a void overshield while inside of the bubble that it can place, and Helm of Saint 14 will also interact with this bubble the same as it does with Ward of Dawn. For the Warlock glaive, Edge of Intent, they've increased the speed and acceleration of the healing turret's projectiles, so it's going to be far more effective. And for the Edge of Concurrence, the Hunter glaive, they've tripled the damage of the wave detonation and increased the number of enemies that it can chain to from 4 to 8. So at the very least, it's going to be worth taking those glaives for a spin. Some other archetypes that they will be buffing though include trace rifles. So for general trace rifles, all of the legendaries, they're increasing damage against non-red bar enemies by 20%, and they're also increasing the ammo picked up per special ammo brick from 18 to 30. So it'll be worth trying things like retraced path again. Also, heavy machine guns are going to see adjustments, and they're increasing damage by 40% against PvE enemies and 20% against bosses specifically. So it is still an all-around buff, and that buff will also affect Xenophage and Grand Overture. The Eyes of Tomorrow exotic rocket launcher, the Deep Stone Crypt raid weapon, for those who have it, will see increased damage versus bosses and champions by 30%. That could be pretty decent. Then looking at weapons like Leviathan's Breath, the Archer's Tempo perk from the Catalyst has an increased effect, and it'll allow the weapon to draw even faster. They've also added a small delay before detonating on champions, mini-bosses, and bosses, which allows the impact to stun unstoppable champions and the detonation to deal bonus damage against them. And the damage has also been changed to be more of an even split between impact and detonation. Plus, they've increased damage across the board by 50%. And Bungie point out that for champions, that means damage is roughly doubled. So again, it could be an interesting one to try out at certain points. They're also buffing Skyburner's Oath, so they've made the weapon hit scan, and both ADS and hipfire modes will be 150 RPM, but the hipfire projectile will no longer track, and instead arc similar to a grenade launcher, with a larger detonation size. And the hipfire detonation will also apply a burn to targets, and the bonus range from the masterwork has been rolled into the base stats of the weapon, with the masterwork now granting bonus reload speed. And it will also have the highest airborne effectiveness stat of any weapon in the game, so it's really going to mix up the potential for that one. And again, for the exotic trace rifles, some of those could be worth looking at, because on top of the base buff for trace rifles, for Cold Heart, sustained damage with a weapon will create an ionic trace, and collecting the trace will grant energy to all of your abilities. And they're also increasing the grace time before the damage ramp clears, so bonus damage will linger for longer on the weapon. They also say that the burn applied to targets by Prometheus Lens will be more useful, so essentially some kind of base buff there. And for Wave Splitter, the void damage type is being updated, and power level no longer cycles randomly, so the default damage output is the same as the old middle tier. But picking up an Orb of Power grants 10 seconds of maximum power and caps at 20 seconds, plus it will suppress targets while granting this mode by picking up an orb. There are of course even more Sandbox changes Bungie have outlined. I do have a video with all of the weapon changes, which I'll link down below if you want to check it out. But it's just good to get a bit of a heads up on some of the neat buffs there, and there'll certainly be some weapons worth pulling out and trying at the start of Season 17. For today though guys, that is everything that we have to round up in the video, so I hope as always it's been interesting and useful. Next week I'll be keeping you posted with all of the brand new content, so definitely get subscribed and turn on notifications. Plus if you've enjoyed the video, a rating below really does help us out, and feel free to share this one with your friends and clanmates. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.